Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast. The show, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And as I promised in the last video, the full card breakdown over at the Apex is going to be broken down by me and my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
You're over at the UFC Apex this week. I'm looking forward to this one. I think a few of these people are going to get cut. We've got some veterans taking on some up-and-comers, some debutants. And what do you think about the card? And what would you kind of grade it as far as your anticipation? Are you looking forward to it, or is this going to be full of bathroom breaks this week?
It's not that it's full of bathroom breaks. It's just the fact that some of these matchups, it looks like just by reading it, it looks like you should be able to tell who's going to win this based on experience. But you just never know who's going to step up on any given night. You know what I mean? On paper, one guy looks head and shoulders above the other, but you know, maybe he'll slip on the banana peel and the other guy will end up winning, the underdog. So you just never know what's going to happen. But anticipation for the card, there's a couple that I'm very interested in. But all in all, if you're a purist, you love MMA, you're a hardcore, you're going to like it. You're going to find something to like in this. You're a casual, might be a lot of bathroom breaks for you.
Yep. And can't forget the degenerates. If you're a degenerate, it's something to bet on. So I know that's why some of the people are here. But like Carlos said, if you're a degenerate, if you're a casual, if you're a hardcore fan, as always, the Ground and Pound podcast has got you covered. We're going to go through the whole entire card, starting with the early prelims all the way up to the main event, breaking it down. We're going to talk a little bit about bets. We're going to talk a little bit about our insight as far as who we like in these matchups. And are you ready to get into the card, Carlos?
Let's do it.
Hell yeah. And kicking things off, we have Loma Lookboonmee taking on Istela Nunes. And I dissected this one, and I came to a very, very slim and an honest conclusion that both of these women aren't necessarily the highest level in terms of the UFC. Loma Lookboonmee was actually not supposed to fight Istela Nunes. Istela Nunes is actually taking this fight on somewhat short notice and replacing, I believe it's Carnelosi. So different opponent for Lookboonmee. Who do you have in this matchup, Carlos?
With Loma. And whether it's short notice or not, like Nunes hasn't won a fight in the UFC, so it doesn't matter. She's the other one that's going to find the banana peel to slip on, whether she was ready for this or not. And yeah, Loma's the more aggressive of the two. She's her clinch work is pretty solid. I could see her just kind of manipulating her in the middle of the ring, knees to the body, elbows to the head. She's going to be more aggressive on the outside. She's got good kicks. She does swing wild, well, like a Thai boxer wide. So Istela can keep her guard up, and hopefully nothing will slip down the middle. Um, on the ground, Loma's been doing better with her wrestling to get out of nasty situations. But like I said, Istela is not anything spectacular. So most likely, if anybody's going to get a takedown, it's probably going to be Lookboonmee. She's probably because she's got some beautiful foot sweeps from the clinch. Um, yeah, I mean, I wish there was more I could say about Istela Nunes. There's really nothing spectacular except when she dislocated her arm in that fight. So yeah, that's all I got. I mean, Loma, the only thing that I really like about her is like she's very aggressive in the stand up, and her clinch work is pretty sweet. It's a little different. A lot of in the women's division, they're not used to that, and it's just something new she brings to the game. So yeah, I don't see Nunes being any bit of a problem for her.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Definitely an easy pick here for me for going with Luma as well. And I just wanted to add as well, like Carlos did mention, that Nunes, the last time we saw her, she did fall, and I don't know if she snapped her elbow, dislocate, but the way I see it, let's hope she doesn't slip on a banana peel, otherwise she might snap her elbow again. The way that I also see this fight going too is that Nunes really needs to snap out of this losing streak that she's been on, and I think it's going to be difficult for her to do against Loma Lookboonmee, just purely because she trains over at Syndicate MMA over there with John Wood. I heard Wood snaps pretty easy as well. But to me, the thing that really stands out to me is the betting line in this one. Like, Loma is -700. In a women's MMA fight, -700 is not a line that I really ever want to go anywhere near, even though I do think that Lookboonmee is probably going to win this fight fairly easily. As Carlos mentioned, great Muay Thai style. Really like her striking on the feet. She's shown that she can also mix in the grappling with her rear naked choke. I believe it was over, was it Corey McKenna, I want to say? Elise Reed, I believe. She was able,
it definitely couldn't have been McKenna.
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's definitely not McKenna. It's Elise Reed. She was able to get the rear naked choke there, which is good for a lady that trains obviously heavily in Muay Thai. And she's also just opened up her own gym as well, which I think is good for her, which I just wanted to add in there. 3-fight win streak. And the only losses that she's had inside the UFC is against Angela Hill and Lupi Godinez, who we saw last week. So pretty high-level losses as well. I don't think Nunes is going to get added to that list. And I'm going with Lookboonmee here to continue that streak. And I don't think Nunes is going to be able to snap anything, but maybe another elbow this week. So 2 picks for Lookboonmee, fairly confident, not touching it on the betting line, that's for sure. And next up, we have Talita Alencar taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. And I'm going to kick this one off. And I have a few things to say about this one. And people always, on this channel and people that I know always give me shit about, my take on women's MMA. And I'm going to start off here with Alencar, high-level BJJ practitioner, gi and no-gi world champion, Pan Am Games, medaled in multiple different facets of BJJ. So a high-level grappler in her element, but she doesn't necessarily have grappling that can get fights to the ground. She is tenacious. She does try to get takedowns, but obviously her wrestling isn't necessarily all that high level to get fights to the ground. But she is tough. She shows good stamina in fights. She's always moving forward, even late into third rounds. Her striking's really just to try to set up her entries for her grappling, but a couple of controversial wins and losses and results inside the UFC, and that goes true for Vanessa as well. A lot of people get on Vanessa. Getting a little hot flush over here, Carlos. I need to calm down. Vanessa Demopoulos, man, like she's great pressure, great lady. Very attractive, beautiful, and yeah. Anyway, great wrestling, high pressure, and I just want to say as well that in her last fight that. She got her glove hooked, and the lady, I forget who she fought, but she basically cheated in order to get an armbar. And although the commentary team was saying, Vanessa Demopoulos, you need to defend the armbar in that situation, the referee completely missed one as far as I'm concerned. She did have her fingers in the glove. I went back, I watched it today for tape study. I don't know how the commission missed that one, especially with all this replay we've got going on. And I also took screenshots of it in case anybody tries to argue with me about it too. So I'm prepared with receipts. Don't worry, Vanessa, I got you, and I'm picking you in this matchup. I think her wrestling's going to be on point. I think she's going to be able to dictate where the fight goes. If she wants to keep it on the feet, I think she's the better striker. I think she's more aggressive. I think she comes out here looking to make a statement after her last, I feel like she got cheated in her last fight. And for anybody that's talking shit about Vanessa Demopoulos, I just got one thing to say to you. Keep my wife's name out your goddamn mouth. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
All right. You're probably not going to be happy about it because I took Alencar in this one. Reason
You're not
being
invited
is
to
like,
the wedding.
That's okay, man. That's okay. Demopoulos is, she's very aggressive and she swings that way too. Problem is her striking, or she's very off balance. She's very awkward, and she does throw everything heavy, which is a plus. It backs up her opponent. Problem is, if she doesn't back up her opponent will catch her reaching and will get a takedown, most likely. The other part is Vanessa also likes to go to the ground as well. She does have some very solid level jiu-jitsu as well. She loves to fight off of her back, though. I'm sure you already know that since the wedding is going to be taking place. So I do believe that Alencar's probably got the advantage once it gets down there. Not to say that Demopoulos cannot hang with her, because it is different. It's not just straight jiu-jitsu. But I do feel that Alencar does have the heads up there. But, you can set up anything with strikes off your back, elbows, hammer fists, stuff that Alencar is not expecting. And you might be able to catch her with, a triangle choke, or, get a sweep, and then she can mount it. Who knows? Yet again, talking about mounting, you might want to calm down there. So
Oh,
Yeah, I don't see her. What?
I was going to say, oh, the desk's raising up, but no, it's definitely not plugged in.
Calm down, tough guy. Calm down. All right, here we go. So now, I just don't feel that Alencar is going to be very good on the feet. And I think that Demopoulos is going to notice that and she's going to come in a little over aggressive. I think that plays to Alencar. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she does. Who knows? That's the one thing about her that's very interesting is that she comes out very aggressive, but she's very awkward. Her feet are very awkward, and she looks like she always wants to fall down when she's throwing. And I think that plays into Alencar, so that's why I took her in this one. So I'm sorry, and I know I'm not invited to the wedding, but I'm not taking Demopoulos in this one.
Well, you can catch the bouquet. It's all good. I will say that the thing that made me kind of flip flop on this one and be a little bit undecided at first was I was a little bit concerned after Demopoulos took her last opponent down to the ground, whose name eludes me right now. But regardless of glove grab or not, I would have liked to have seen her keep that fight on the feet a little bit more. But the thing to me with Alencar that I noticed in a lot of her fights is even though she's this credentialed higher level black belt and all these, Pan Am games, et cetera, et cetera. If you actually look at her record, she's submitting girls who aren't high level, but then when she's fighting against girls at the UFC level, she's mostly going to decisions with them. So I don't necessarily think that she's as dangerous as her accolades prevail. And when you actually look through some of the grappling tournaments and some of the high level grappling that she's been involved in, she's not submitting those women. She's winning on points. So not to say that I think that Demopoulos is, this high level grappler or anything like that. I just think that the aggression, the strength advantage for Demopoulos, I think, is going to show on the feet. I think Alencar is going to struggle to get the fight to the ground. Whereas Demopoulos' last opponent, she was able to actually have a little bit more size, strength, and wrestling to actually get Demopoulos to the ground in exchanges where she can find submissions, where I don't see that with Alencar. I know that she's a good grappler, but most of the time she's not actually submitting her opponents, which was the thing that I feel like if she doesn't submit Demopoulos, I don't really feel like she's going to be able to win the fight. And one of the things I do like about Demopoulos is she's a tough bitch. Like she really goes for, on the feet. She will throw wild kicks. She will throw punches. And I know you said, that could be the thing that gets her taken down. I just think that she's going to be able to keep the fight standing. If she does, I think she wins. I think if the fight stays on the ground, I think that she can stay safe or get back to her feet. But I'm rooting for Demopoulos, man, if I haven't made that clear already. And next up, we have Victor Henry taking on Pedro Falcao. And I'm going to pass this one over to you, Carlos. Who you have in this one?
Well, I think Henry is the more complete fighter of the two. I think Falcao's whole game plan is to probably get you down, strangle you, choke you, break something, which is fine. He finds ways to, tether himself onto his opponent and get him to the ground. I just feel as soon as Falcao gets him to the ground, Henry might be able to do some things off his back, just like Demopoulos I had mentioned. Like he might be able to throw some elbows, might be able to do some hammer fists, create some space with his legs, because he does come from the gym. War Master is in charge of. I can't remember the name of it, but Josh Barnett, catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu expert. Victor Henry knows how to fight off the ground. He has been submitted. He's been caught. Happens. That's fine. He's very well versed. But you know, you got to weigh the options. Getting caught in a guillotine by Charles Jourdain. Not that Charles Jourdain isn't good, and that could be his bread and butter move, the guillotine, because people are always trying to take him out. I'm just saying you can't let your neck get exposed like that with Falcao. So, yeah, I'm taking Pedro on this. I think if Henry can keep this on his feet, I think he can have a lot of success. Problem is you're probably going to have to catch Pedro coming in, or you're going to have to fight those hands all fight and create some separation, because on the feet, he's going to get you up against the cage at some point. Doesn't have very slick striking to get inside. Probably a part of his game he's going to need to get better at. But as of right now, um, he's I can't even say like he's very beginner level on his feet. I actually really haven't seen a lot of it.
Mm.
So yeah, so Henry's definitely got the edge on the feet. If he can keep it there, he'll have success. I just feel that it's going to get to the ground. I'm going Falcao.
Mm. Yeah, I was interested this week to see who you were going to pick in this matchup because I'll be honest, I thought you were going to go with Henry, but it's going to be two for Falcao. I'm going with Falcao, and third degree Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. That stood out to me straight away, especially with Henry coming off of a submission loss to Charles Jourdain, like Carlos mentioned, and that's only his first loss by submission. That's actually the first time that he's ever actually been finished. But the thing that I always talk about, especially on this show, is at some point with fighters that you see kind of in a lighter weight class, they don't tend to, they don't tend to be there very long. It's when they start to hit these 37s, 38s, and unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated, and I feel like Henry may be on the decline. He has good pressure and he has good volume. He's somebody I have looked to bet many times, but I think I'm going to fade him here and go with Falcao just purely because Falcao in his UFC debut took that fight on 4 days' notice. And the thing that really stood out to me was in that fight, he was able to take down Victor Hugo. He was able to take his back, control him on the ground, win round one with his grappling. Second round, he comes out. Hugo was able to defend takedowns, but Falcao literally did not stop that whole entire second and third round. He did not quit. 4 days' notice, he made weight as well. So this guy is ready in shape. He trains at Jose Aldo's gym with a couple of other UFC fighters that are in a similar weight class to him. So you have to believe that with a full camp, ready this time, prepared. Henry coming off of a submission loss, he's going to be looking to, implement his jiu-jitsu, heavy grappling game plan, like Carlos said. And the thing that really stands out to me as well here is that we haven't seen too much in the way of his striking. Fair compliment. I also haven't, fair statement by Carlos, I should say. I haven't seen too much in the way of his striking, but Henry doesn't really have a power, I feel like, to get people's respect. If he had like a one-hitter quitter, then I would say, okay, this might be dangerous for Falcao, constantly shooting and constantly going for takedowns. But I just think he's going to have a hard time getting Pedro Falcao off of him. And I'm going to make him the dog of the week this week. I think that he shouldn't be the underdog as heavy as he is. I think people are, kind of overlooking Pedro here. And he's my dog of the week this week. And he's almost plus 200. I think he opened at almost plus 200. But I think he's like plus 175, plus 160, something like that now. So people see what I see. I like Falcao. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting a submission victory here. And this is kind of the last we see of Victor Henry as an older fighter in the UFC at a lighter weight class. So dog of the week, Pedro Falcao. I like him in this matchup. And I think this one should be closer to a pick'em. So going with Falcao for 2 for Falcao. And next up, we have Rhys McKee taking on Daniel Frunza. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this one?
I got is it Frunza?
Frunza, yeah.
Frunza, yeah. I took Frunza because McKee, from what I've seen so far, like he's only kind of displayed his toughness in the ring so far. He hasn't really been super offensive. I watched some of his videos prior to the UFC, and he's been able to get off and get some fights that look good. But he's kind of always fighting from behind. Since he's been in the UFC, he's always been fighting off his back foot. And I understand, like he does usually have, I'd say does have a little bit of a height reach advantage at that height and size for the weight class. So fighting backwards, off your back foot is great, but he's usually fighting off his back foot more defensively, trying to keep his opponent off of him. So that doesn't really help him at all in this one. I think that in the grappling exchanges, he's shown that he can scramble, he's shown that he can wrestle, and he looks good, but I just think that you're not going to beat Frunza just with fighting off your back foot. I think he's a little bit more aggressive. I think he's going to come in and just kind of bully him around the ring. So I didn't really see anything super impressive, from Frunza. I do think that his aggression is probably going to help him win this matchup. Yeah, I mean everything that I've said about McKee are the things that I think that help Frunza look good in this fight, keeping him on his back foot, making him fight, from behind. playing catch up. And I think that his aggression just makes McKee, um, if not getting a finish, I think to the judges, it just makes him look like he's trying to survive in the ring.
Mm. I'm actually going Rhys McKee, man. I never thought I'd say these words would ever come out of my mouth. I've been fading Rhys McKee for a very long time, Carlos. Rhys McKee is a slight underdog in this matchup, but I never thought there'd be a day where I'm going to tell people that we should bet on Rhys McKee, and it's come. But Frunza, when I watched his UFC debut, he fought the 17-1 Bosnian guy, and that Bosnian guy looked super impressive on paper, but when I looked into his record, it seemed pretty padded. And Frunza in that fight, even when he had his opponent hurt, he dropped him, and he wasn't able to follow up because he instantly got taken down, even though the guy was on skates and half knocked out. This guy literally just shot at his legs and took him down. And I was thinking, wow, this guy, even though he's still conscious, he's able to take him down, and Frunza did nothing about it. So then as the fight goes on, he gets taken down again with some really shitty takedowns. And I'm like, this guy has absolutely zero takedown defense. His grappling sucks. On the ground, his guard's wide open. I don't know why his opponent didn't just keep the fight on the ground. I don't know what that was all about, but Frunza to me just doesn't have a ground game. On the feet, Carlos is right. He is very, very aggressive. He does like to throw leather, and he does have power in his hands. But McKee's impressed me in his last fight when he fought against Nzechukwu. He looked decent on the feet. When he had moments in that fight where it was a split decision. Nzechukwu looked good in the UFC up until this point, especially at welterweight. And I'm going Rhys McKee. I think that if he mixes in some grappling, I think that he will easily find the takedown, even though he's not necessarily known for his wrestling and his grappling. I think he's got 3 submission wins in his pro career as an MMA fighter. I think if the camp looks at this guy, Frunza, I think honestly they're going to look and they're going to say, hey, let's implement some grappling. He's going to come out, like Carlos said, very aggressive. We can look to use that to our advantage, let him overextend, duck underneath, get the takedown. And I think McKee can mix in the grappling here. I think McKee's live for a submission. I think he can finish it on the ground. And also as well on the feet, he does have the 5-inch reach advantage for McKee. In that fight with Chidi, he showed, he likes to fight behind the jab and fight long. He doesn't necessarily sit in the pocket. And I also just want to kind of read out as well, like who Rhys McKee has lost to in the UFC. So he's lost to Khamzat Chimaev. I give that a pass, 100%. He's probably going to fight for a title. Chidi, who's looked fantastic in so far at welterweight. He looks rejuvenated on a win streak currently. Angelosa, which isn't necessarily the best loss, but fairly respectable, performance in that fight. And Alex Morono, who's, been around the block. And I kind of expect McKee to lose to all of those people because he doesn't really pose much of a threat to any of those guys. But I think the grappling here is going to be enough. I think the striking is enough. The only way that I see Frunza winning is if he gets aggressive and chins McKee, early, which obviously is a possibility. But I'm going to go with McKee. I think he's being undervalued here.
Like I said, with Frunza, I wish there was something impressive that I could say would stand out. So picking McKee here is obviously like a good pick too. Like I don't feel confident in Frunza, but I'm like, I'm like, who do I go with? Like, every video I've seen of McKee, I'm like, he's going backwards. Maybe he's not used to fighting that way. Then I watch some of his old videos and I'm like, oh, he does fight off his back foot a lot, trying to utilize his height. So maybe those guys were aggressive. And I'm like, Frunza, what does he do? And all I have written down here is he's aggressive on his feet. That's it. So I'm like, I think everyone should listen to him and go with McKee, but I'm going to stick with Frunza. I'm going down with the ship.
I will just want to add just before we do move on as well, Daniel Frunza, just so you know, 9-2, those 2 losses are both submission losses as well. So the proof is in the pudding in the previous performances that he's had on the regional scene that he has been submitted. So you have to think as well. I mean, if the McKee camp doesn't come in and implement grappling game plan, then they must just hate their fighter. But I understand if you want to keep your money in your wallets. McKee is 0-4 in the UFC. I understand there's other spots on the card, but I'm going to be betting him this week. I'm not going to tell you guys what to do with your money, but I know what I'm doing with mine. And before we break this one down, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. A lot of you are watching the content and you are not hitting that like and subscribe button, helping this channel grow. And we're going to break down this match. I'm going to pass this one to Carlos. We have Dione Barbosa taking on Dione Belbita. And who do you have in this one?
In this fight, I went with Dione Barbosa. Belbita's kind of sloppy in her movements. Like she will make up for it by like trying to swing hard, I guess. But she tries to keep an in your face kind of pace. But Barbosa's kind of a tank, and she's probably going to bully her around the ring. Barbosa seems strong in her stance, so most of the strikes that Belbita usually hits, I feel like it's not going to phase her as much. Um, Throws decent technique, Belbita, decent jiu-jitsu, has a couple submission finishes. Yeah, Barbosa's, like I said, going to be a little bit more physically imposing, and she'll get it done.
Yeah, I probably the shortest breakdown from me all night, but I literally just going to read you what I put in my notes. I put Dione should win however she wants. She will probably get a finish. 5 of the 9 losses that Dione Belbita has had in her professional career have come by way of submission. That is Dione's best path to victory and her most likely path to victory. So I'm just going to say Barbosa comes out. She comes out aggressive. She doesn't respect her. Like Carlos said, she's going to bully her. Get her to the ground either in rounds 1 or 2, most likely 1. Make a statement and probably come out and submit her, if I'm being honest. That's literally a 1 + 1 = 2 breakdown, I understand. But I think this one really is that simple. And just to talk a little bit about Dione Belbita, I will just say that she's talked a little bit about, like, what she's going to do after the UFC. And I think her head, in terms of like the interviews I've seen, she's talked about what I'm doing after. I have 1 fight left on my contract. It's kind of, this to me sounds more like I'm just going to take the money from this fight. I know I'm probably going to lose, and I'm just going to take that money and open my own gym kind of thing. So I definitely wouldn't trust a fighter whose kind of head is on the way out. So it's pretty much Barbosa all day for me. I think she takes her down and mauls her.
It's okay. It's OnlyFans needs more work too.
It's honest work, man. It's honest work.
I didn't say it wasn't bad. I didn't say it was bad. I just said they need more people,
And if OnlyFans wants to sponsor us, there's plenty of room at the bottom of the slide. But moving on. Anyway, we have Davey Grant taking on Daniel Santos. And I got to say, this one I'm a little bit excited for. I watched tape on both of these fighters, and I'm looking forward to this one. Davey Grant, the ageless wonder man, 39. He seems to keep getting better, fighting out of the UK, and he trains over at Syndicate MMA from time to time. And great kickboxer, great shape, good cardio. Arguably should be on a 4-fight win streak. I think his, not the last fight, but the fight before, it was a split decision against Daniel Marcos, which a lot of people thought that he won as an underdog. He is an underdog in this matchup. He was also coming off, I think people counted him out because he had a big neck surgery before his last fight against Ramon Tavares. And I've never really been that high on Ramon Tavares. I thought that Davey Grant should have gone out there and dog walked him, and he did. But Daniel Santos, shooter box fighter, trains with Charles Oliveira, coming off a 2-year layoff. I couldn't find the reason why Santos came off of a 2-year layoff, which made this one really hard for me, because when I watched Santos on tape, I was looking at him thinking, wow, I really like this guy. Very aggressive, very durable, never stops coming forward. Typical shooter box fighter. When he fought against John Castaneda, he ate 2 huge head kicks and he just kept coming. He didn't even fall down. Young in his prime, athletic, flying knees, elbows, everything. Great jiu-jitsu, great scrambles, everything that you expect from those guys. And if I knew what the 2-year layoff was, whether it was an injury, whether he just took time out, whatever it was, visa issue, I don't know, I would feel a lot more confident about this pick, especially because Grant usually is the guy that has a lot of upsets. But I'm going to go with Santos. I think that at some point, again, it's going to be hard to trust 39-year-old Davey Grant. At some point, he's going to fall off. I don't give him too much credit about the Tavares last win, because I don't think Tavares is even that good. He's lucky to be in the UFC, to be honest. And I just think that Santos' speed is going to be enough. We've seen Davey Grant get submitted like 4 or 5 times, I believe, earlier on in his career before he got to the UFC. Santos is training with Oliveira. He's got submissions. He's great in scrambles. I could see a wrestle-heavy game plan here. Get Grant to the ground, try and submit him. I think that's live in this spot, especially at like plus 600 or plus 650. But I'm going Santos. I don't feel super confident. I wish I knew what the layoff was, but I'm going to be picking Santos, but rooting for Davey Grant because hometown, home country, Davey Grant. Hopefully he doesn't get cut after this one, but I'm going Santos. Who you got in this one?
Well, I do think Santos, like you said, his best path to victory would be to wrestle heavy, game plan, and look for submissions. I really feel like, and I know this is going to sound funny to say, but because he's changed his striking in the years past, as Davey Grant is kind of like a version of a shooter box fighter. The English version of it, he pretty much like throws everything hard, 100%, trying to get you out of there. And like I said, he didn't have to look impressive. Like you said it, he didn't have to look impressive against Tavares because you know he Tavares isn't that impressive. Am I saying that right? Is it Tavares?
Yeah, Tavares. Yeah,
Tavares? Okay, yeah. Just making sure I got the right guy. I was thinking of the guy later on Tavares. I was like,
yeah.
that's a weight class. But yes, Ramon Tavares. So, I there's really nothing to be like, okay, in his last matchup he looked great because Tavares I don't think is very impressive either. But I ended up going with Davey Grant, and the reason being is I feel like Grant will be able to stop some of these takedown attempts. Now I know that Santos does have some good stand up. Um, it doesn't seem like he was thrown with a lot of steam on it in some of the videos I was watching. So I'm like, all right, those are some things where Davey can exploit and probably land a hammer of his own. I don't know if he's going to drop him with one shot, but I think he's going to ring this guy's bell. He is tough, though, Santos. He's very tough. He can take a shot, too. I think that's his best path to victory is to take it to the ground, but I do believe that Davey's got enough to keep it off the ground. He's got enough to defend off the ground and to get back up. And I think he drops a couple bombs on him. I could be wrong, but I am not going to vote out Mr. Grant because I did it one time and he made me look stupid. And I think this is another up and coming prospect in Santos. And I think he hasn't run into somebody like Grant yet.
Mm. Yeah, and that 2-year layoff also makes me a little nervous as well. I can't lie, but I got to be honest. When I looked at this on paper, I almost thought like, oh, Davey Grant, like dog of the week, like he's upset people before, people count him out or whatever, and I couldn't quite get there. But I know what you mean. Like I almost picked Davey Grant. I'm super not. If somebody thinks like, hey, I really love Davey Grant in this matchup, don't let me put you off betting on him because I'm not that confident in Santos, and I'm not sure if this one goes the distance. I think both guys have got finishing potential, and I really am interested to see what kind of game plan Santos comes in with. And I do like Davey Grant. I do think that he's got some years left and some tread on the tires, even though he's at 135. I do think he's still, he looks feasible, man. I mean, he's great striking, and he's definitely had an improved ground game. I think he got a inverted triangle in like 3 fights ago as well. So no slouch on the ground, even though he has been submitted before. But I'm rooting for you, Davey. I'm rooting for you. And next up, we have Osbourne taking on Luis Gurule. And I don't really have too much to say about this one. I am going to pick Luis Gurule. To me, I can't really trust Osbourne anymore. Osbourne, to me, he has a big facet or a big hole in his game that I think people love to exploit, and that's going for the takedowns. He showed in his last fight against Lazy Boy over at UFC Noche that he could have you hurt, and as long as you shoot at his legs, you'll probably take him down. And he just looks like a fighter in there that he's constantly thinking. He looks like he's not reacting. He's not sort of in a flow state. He's constantly looking for his corner for advice. He's constantly looking for a seal of approval, and they're always having to reassure him. And at 33, even though he is, the older fighter in this matchup, I think he'll have the speed advantage, but I think that's probably the only real advantage I see. And to be honest with you, when I saw Luis on Contender Series, I was impressed with his cardio. He fights at Elevation, at the same gym as Brandon Royval. So one of his main training partners is obviously a guy that's high up there in the division that might even be getting a title shot soon. You have to think that he's obviously going to be implementing a wrestle-heavy game plan for this particular fight when you look at Osbourne's tape. I think if he keeps it on the feet, I feel like that's like he can have success. He definitely sits down on his shots. But I feel like the least path to victory would be to wrestle here. In his Contender Series fight, he did fight a wrestler who was a much higher level wrestler than him, and he seemed to have fantastic scrambles, even though he doesn't necessarily look the kind of guy that's going to be fast, or he kind of looks like a bit of a plodding, flat-footed fighter. But he showed some athleticism in that fight. He impressed me, and to be honest with you, I don't necessarily think it takes much to beat Buday as long as you get takedowns. And on the feet, it's kind of like an A for Osbourne and a B for Luis in terms of grading. So I think he mixes in the takedowns. I think he stays undefeated, and I think Buday Osbourne might get cut at this point. So I'm going with Luis. Not super confident, but going to think the UFC debutant gets the win in his first fight in the UFC. Who do you have in this one?
It sucks because I'm like on the feet, Buday Osbourne's got the advantage. Not just because of the reach factor, the height, but I feel that if he can just stay on his feet, he'll have the advantage. But even when he's winning, he'll shoot. Now it's good to mix it up. You know what I mean? Like it's good to mix up your striking and whether you're going to actually commit to the shot or just fake one just to get the guy thinking. But he fully commits to every shot, even though he doesn't really complete all of them. And that makes me want to take Gurule, but what I was thinking was because I had to go back and forth on this one a lot, and I was like, I did put the line under Gurule for that reason, is that Buday just he kind of blows his own fight sometime, but I'm like, should I switch it? Should I go to Osbourne? I feel like this is gonna be his night. Like I wouldn't bet on him, but I feel like he's gonna do it. Um, for the reason being is that I don't find Gurule very impressive either. Like, yes, like they said that he's got some good stand up, but I don't know. It doesn't do anything impressive. Maybe it's because I don't think he has like that speed for that weight class. It looks like he's always a step behind. I feel like Osbourne should have this. Like, he should have this win locked, but I can't trust him either. Damn it, Osbourne. All right, I'm gonna stick with my pick, and I'm going with Gurule, but I feel like Buday's got this fight.
I know what you mean, because like I do think that in terms of the striking and the speed and Luis being UFC debut, I definitely could see Buday landing a shot, and he's dropped people in the past many a times in fights and not been able to finish the deal. But one thing I will say about Gurule is if you watch this fight and Gurule comes out and he wrestles and he gets that first takedown, just look at Buday Osbourne's face, because I feel like if he gets a takedown early, I feel like Buday Osbourne's gonna kind of have that body language and that look on his face, like, oh, not this again, And I think that that's going to be enough to take him out of it, and I think that might be all it takes for him to to kind of lose this fight, is that he kind of thinks like, oh man, not again, and Luis, like I mentioned as well, training with Brandon Royval at Elevation. Like I know out of the two of them, I know whose cardio is better. But I'm with Carlos. I have this weird feeling about this fight as well. Like I would bet on Luis, but there's just a weird feeling that I feel like Buday is just kind of fighting for his job. 4-6 in the UFC. Like he's kind of on that cusp where he might get cut, or he probably will get cut if he doesn't win this one. And sometimes that could just be enough, for fighters to kind of pull one last trick out to get a new contract. So I'm not personally going to bet on this one, but I'm interested to see from watching from a fan standpoint where this one heads. And next up, we have Torian Finney taking on Robert Valentin, and I'm going to pass this one to Carlos first. Two big characters, two nice, like pretty cool personalities, but who do you have in this one, Carlos?
This was a very short breakdown, and I went with Torrez Finney. And the reason why I did it was Valentin can be absolutely controlled on the ground by a good high level folk style wrestler, just like Finney. And, it happened against Loader. I don't see it happening any differently against Finney, unless, like, as Finney's shooting, Valentin gets a flying knee or lands an uppercut, random straight that puts him right out. I just don't think that's going to happen. And Valentin he's a tough competitor. He's very wild. Sometimes, like he'll pull moves out of nowhere, and but he's very calculated. You see that on the Ultimate Fighter. There's always a little bit of a method to his madness. He's looking to create openings with some of his movement. He is a character. Um, so yeah, I went with Finney for that reason. It was so easy to control him on the ground. Now maybe Loda's just that kind of wrestler that's looking to control you on the ground, and Torrez is actually looking to inflict a little damage when he's got you on the ground. Although he's always control first, and then he's loading up on a couple of shots. Sometimes maybe all Valentin needs is that little bit of distance that you need for that shot. That's all he needs to get up. So maybe that's going to be the X factor that makes Valentin win. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I've been a fan of Torrez Finney. For those of you that don't know, on Contender Series, Dana White made him come back, even though he finished his first opponent. He wasn't convinced that a 5'8" guy at middleweight would be successful in the UFC, so he made him come back. He didn't give him a contract the first time, and he came out in the first round, was able to get the finish the second time around, and he gave him a contract. And I said to Carlos before we got live, he's a very, very likable guy, seems pretty cool, and he does the interview with Laura Sanko, and hits the fans with exactly what they want with the can you smell what the Torrez is cooking? So very likable guy. Really, really like the guy. I wish him all the best. And I got to be honest as well, if you've not seen Robert Valentin fight, like Carlos mentioned when he fought on the Ultimate Fighter, the guy made it all the way through to the final and ended up losing to Ryan Loder, who ended up being, or who is a very, very high-level wrestler over in the States. I can't remember the exact credentials of Ryan Loder, but I believe he's like a Division I All-American, like champion, blah, 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 blah. Basically, long story short, like I expected Ryan Loder to win the whole thing. And I say all of that to say I am going to pick Tori and Finney Smith, but Robert Valentin just has this thing where it's kind of like he's kind of like Yuri Prohaska. He's like he just has that weird style where it's like unpredictable. You watch him on tape, he gets taken down, and all of a sudden he finds a submission out of nowhere, and he just has this really weird style of fighting. And I also have to point out, 6'2", taking on 5'8", and there's a reason Dana didn't want to sign Tori Finney in the first fight. He was not convinced that he was going to be able to hang with some real sized middleweights. And Valentin's a big guy, 6'2". He's going to have the reach advantage ever so slightly here, and he's dangerous off of his back. He really is really good at creating scrambles and picking up submissions. And I could see Torrez, going for takedowns and using his muscle and size early in round one here. But what's he going to look like in round two, round three, if we get there? And I could see maybe Valentin pulling away. And this one's bugged me all week because I just have this feeling, kind of like what Carlos said about Ode. I have this weird feeling that Valentin is gonna pull it off. I feel like it's gonna be like a third round submission. I feel like it's gonna be maybe second or third round. I'm not betting this one. But I actually think I'm going to switch my pick. I just have this really weird feeling that Valentin's going to win. And unfortunately, Finney's just not going to deal with the size at middleweight. Not betting it, but I'm going to go with Valentin as the underdog. I really want to see Torrez win. I do like him, but I feel like if you get to the final of the Ultimate Fighter, you are respectable. You know what I mean? Like, you are decent. He did beat some high-level guys to get to that point, and I expected him to lose to Ryan Loder. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Valentin. I don't love this fight. I think that it's really difficult to pick. Rooting for Torrez, though. I do like him. So, but yeah, the pick is going to be Robert Valentin. And next up, we have Brad Tavares, taking on Gerald Meerschaert, the man with the mustache. And I'm going to pass this one over to Carlos, the battle of the 37-year-olds. Carlos, who do you have in this old man matchup?
Old man matchup. Well, I would like to say Meerschaert's tough. He does hang in there with people that probably don't hit as well as others. So tough enough. Striking, he's better than Renier de Ridder. I mean, we all saw like he looked unbelievable on his feet. He looked like Brandon Moreno on his feet with Renier de Ridder. Which doesn't say much, but Tavares, good takedown defense, solid striking. He's very much more complete. He can fight wherever the fight goes. Meerschaert's not very complete. He can only fights very good off of his back, and if he gets mount, so he's very one dimensional in the ring. Doesn't have that good of a beard on him. It was an easy pick to go with Tavares. The problem being is Tavares sometimes just falls apart. So what if he goes down and then just gets submitted? Although Tavares never really been submitted in his career, I don't think. You know what I mean? So whether it's his good takedown defense or maybe it's the fact that he has good ability to survive on the ground, I don't see a submission coming, even though Meerschaert's supposed to be very highly touted with his jiu-jitsu. I feel Tavares is going to put it on him. Might even get him out of there, but as much as I feel I like Tavares, like mentally sometimes, like okay, I'm going to give you a good example. He should have just Chris Weidman. I think he was being very merciful. And sometimes in that case, I feel like maybe he's going to hit Meerschaert and be like, should I get him out of there? Or should I just let him survive? Because he's my age. I don't want to knock a guy my age out, I don't want to give him that brain damage. Listen, Tavares, I want to bet on you, so give him the brain damage. Put him out. Send him to the hospital. Okay? Get it done, because you can do that. You guys may be 37, but he looks 47, and you look 37. So put it together, get him out of there, so I can pick you next time. They're pretty easy.
Yeah, it's going to be 2 for Tavares. I'm picking Tavares as well. I do like Gerald Meerschaert, obviously copying my look from last week for the Mexican card with that mustache. But I think that this is, again, going to be a very simple breakdown for me. Brad Tavares has excellent takedown defense. We saw in his last fight against Jung Young Park that Park has the ability to take fights to the ground. He likes to be able to wrestle, and Tavares made it very difficult for him to get the fight to the ground, and it took him late into that fight to be able to get a successful takedown. And Park has much, much better wrestling than Gerald Meerschaert does. And Meerschaert's main weapon or threat on the feet is usually, the jab and the 1-2, but he's very, very stiff on the feet. Tavares should have a big striking and a big boxing advantage here. I think that Meerschaert, when it comes to his best path to victory, is to get you to the ground and submit you, which he's not going to have the wrestling to do against Tavares. And to me, this one really picks itself. It's Tavares all day. I think that he's going to be able to outlast Gerald Meerschaert on the feet. He's going to have all the success on the feet. And to me, if Brad Tavares can't win in this matchup, I think he needs to be cut regardless, or he needs to quit, and retire. Because I think this is an ideal matchup for him when he's fighting a guy that doesn't have the wrestling to take him to the ground. And the losses that he's had recently against Gregory Rodriguez, that's not a bad loss at all. And he lost to Jung Young Park and Bruno Silva. So not terrible losses at all. Whereas, Meerschaert's just kind of been beating the run-of-the-mill, lower level guys. And I think Tavares has still got enough in the tank to get this one done. So 2 picks for Tavares here. And next up, we have Martin Buday taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu. And this one, to me, is a sloppy heavyweight fight, let's really be honest. I've not really been impressed with either of these two guys, but heavyweight really just needs one particular fight to happen, and we all know what that is. And it's Tom taking on John Jones. That's the one we're really looking forward to. We don't care about this one. And Martin Buday, really, he just holds people up against the fence. Oh, is that John? Is that you? Yeah, I think Martin Buday really in this matchup, I think he's too slow. Kennedy Nzechukwu has respectable striking since he's moved up to heavyweight. He's got the speed advantage. He's looked decent at heavyweight. He fights behind a jab, fairly decent in terms of speed compared to other heavyweights. And I'm picking him here. I'm not betting him. I'm not super confident in him, but Martin Buday just leaves a lot to be desired. He's very slow, very plodding. He likes to hold guys against the fence and doesn't do a whole lot of damage in the way of, trying to actually give the judges something to score. And I can rely on Kennedy to do that. So I'm picking him in this matchup, not betting him because Kennedy Nzechukwu can sometimes absolutely have stinkers in performances of guys he should beat, which he's done in the past. But I'm picking him here. Carlos, who do you have in this sloppy heavyweight matchup?
I went with Kennedy Nzechukwu. Okay, and he looked pretty good in his last 2 fights since moving up to heavyweight. which doesn't say much. The one thing that did stand out is that his volume went up. Problem is Buday is, a fairly tough guy. He's kind of goofy in his movements. You know, not only sloppy technique, like athleticism. You know, it's very much lacking. I think that's where Kennedy's going to be a little bit better. He's a little lighter on his feet, even at heavyweight. He's been looking pretty good. Um, should have the movement, the length, the reach, everything to win this fight. And I don't see how he's going to lose this, but I feel like somehow, in some way, Buday is a little tougher than Nzechukwu, and that part kind of leaves me thinking, well, he may be goofing and plotting and kind of hulking in all of his movements, but the fact is like I think mentally he's a little tougher than Kennedy. But with that said, he's got to be able to implement it. I think Kennedy can keep him at bay, and I'm going with Nzechukwu. I still don't even find it in this fight, but Kennedy should feel confident enough in his ability to keep him off to win this fight. So make us proud, Kennedy.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I've noticed here as well, like 6-inch reach advantage here for Kennedy. But the thing with him sometimes, I feel like his fight IQ lets him down a little bit, and I would not be surprised if Kennedy's the one that instigates the clinch, which is where Buday loves to be, holding guys up against the fence. And even though he has the reach and the speed and the striking in this matchup, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden he comes out and decides to clinch. But that's kind of heavyweight MMA at this point in time, and I think that's why we need to see John versus Tom, just to kind of give the division some meaning and some point and some challenges to come forward. So hopefully John stops ducking Tom Aspinall and we can all get what we want. And the Ground and Pound podcast is all here for you, Tom. We know what the people want to see. And next up, we have Cortavious Ramones taking on Chang Ho Lee. And this one, again, is a pretty straightforward one for me. I don't necessarily think either of these two guys are or anything to write home about. One thing that I did like about Lee, though, is when I watched tape on him and some of his interviews, he talked about being the Korean Khabib, which I thought was pretty funny. Pretty much a tenacious wrestling style, has a little bit of striking, but he ultimately wants to grapple. He loves to get fights to the ground. He has decent control once he gets fights to the ground, and he has that dog in him, which is what I'm actually going to pick him in this. But why I'm actually going to pick him in this matchup. And Cortavious, the thing I noticed is in his last fight, in his UFC debut, I forget the individual that he fought, but he implemented a heavy wrestling game plan, and he was able to get fights to the ground. He was able to get his opponent into some precarious positions on the ground, but he kept on going for submissions over position. And I wrote that down in my notes, like the last time that he fought. And I look back on my notes today and I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this kid. And it was so frustrating to watch that he was one of these guys that, he'd have a triangle or he'd have a guillotine or he'd have a particular submission and he'd be in a dominant position. He'd give up that dominant position to try to go for the submission and end up getting reversed and then beaten up and ultimately lose the fight because of it. If he rode those positions out, he'd probably be able to win that fight. And the thing I don't have to worry about here with Lee is that I know once he gets in those dominant positions, he's going to be able to control Cortavious. So that's what ultimately made me pick him here. But I will say, road to UFC guys, they can be a little bit untrustworthy, and sometimes Asian fighters on the regional scene can be a little bit tough to trust because of how, creditable their wins and losses are on the regional scene over there. But I'm going to pick Lee here to get it done as the favorite. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I like everything you said about Lee, okay, because that's what I noticed too. What I also notice is whether he calls himself the Korean Khabib or not, when he's on the ground and he's got some decent control down there, he also has strong control on the feet because he does love to clinch his opponent as well, even standing in the middle of the ring or against the cage. He just wants to be close to you to inflict some kind of punishment to you. Because it's so close, he doesn't really inflict too much punishment. You know what I mean? Like he's not really getting these cuts or elbow hooks, finishes, knees to the body, but he does stay busy enough, possibly break you in a clinch. So that's something to keep in mind. One thing, the reason why I picked Romious in this fight is because within those first 2 rounds, before he gets tired by the end of the second round, because he does a lot of grappling. Um, he does a lot of grappling. He's going to have to fight out of some positions. He's going to have to get his head out of some clinch work. So that's also going to slow him down. He's got that athleticism to get up, even if he gets taken down. And he's got the strength, the speed, the power to do so until he gets tired. He's got that pop. And I feel like within rounds 1 and 2, before he gets tired, even in a clinch setting, he's got enough snap to probably drop him a few times. I don't know how good he's going to hold up against it when he fought Gaston Bolaños. He stung him with a couple of shots pretty good, you know what I mean? And Bolaños was tough enough to come back, make it happen. Does it have the same effect on Lee as it had on Bolaños? Because if it does, I feel like he could finish Lee, whether he's going to submit him or get the TKO. Lee, if it goes past the second round, I feel like he's probably going to win by submission or decision. So I'm going with Romious. I think he's kind of a wild card. If he doesn't get gassed in the second round, first and second round, anything after that, I would go with Lee. I think he can get it done.
Dissension on the Ground and Pound podcast. This one's a tough one. I got to be honest with you. I could see this one going either way. I'm not super confident in Lee, but Cortavious just did enough in his last fight to put me off picking him for this one. And maybe he's made improvements, still only 31, but and road to UFC fighters, like I said, are tough to trust. But some dissension between me and Carlos here. I'm interested to see where this one heads.
Who's the favorite?
Lee is a slight favorite, ever so slight favorite.
Okay. I can, okay, if it's close, I get it, like, slight, because I could see why Lee could be a favorite in this one. Romious is going to have to fight flawless to be able to get an opening on Lee. I think Lee is going to be able to implement his wrestling, and his clinch work I was pretty impressed with it because he's just putting that weight on your neck and making you carry him.
Yeah.
And Romious, being shorter, is going to have a hard time getting out of the clinch, which is going to lead to getting a takedown from there as well. So that's why I said he's going to have to use some of his strength, his athleticism, and technique to get out of some nasty situation. I just feel that the opening is going to be there, and he might be able to exploit it, or he might not. But I'm taking him, and I think if he's winning this, it's probably not going to be a decision. It's probably going to have to be a stoppage.
I remember watching his fight back in Cortavious, and I remember screaming at the TV, and I didn't even bet on him, and it just frustrated me so much when I see fighters get into a dominant position and instead of just, kind of not necessarily coasting, but getting into a dominant position and giving that up, just going for a finish or going for a submission. It frustrates the hell out of me because I just feel like, in that moment, you just got to take a second and understand where you are. And I feel like it's because he's, fighting off emotion instead of fight IQ. It's just very frustrating to watch. And that was enough to put me off of him in this one. And I'm not going to be betting on Lee either, but it was enough to put me off. And that brings us to the co-main event, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button for the Ground and Pound podcast and help us grow if you're enjoying all the content that we have over here. PFL, best bets, full card breakdowns of the UFC. We've got it all and much more to come. And this one, to me, this one's a banger. This is one I paid attention to right when I saw it get dropped as it listed as the co-main event. And we have Joe Anderson Brito, who's always a fan favorite, taking on Pat Sabatini. And I'm going to pass this one to Carlos. Who do you have in this one, Carlos?
Both fighters got a good ground game, so I do give the edge to Sabatini in that. Okay, he does have a lot more wins by submission. He also does a lot of just straight grappling matches, and he's got a lot of wins in those as well. So I'm gonna give him the edge on that. That's not to say that Brito can't submit him, and it's not to say that he can't get out of sticky situations on the ground. Sabatini's wrestling can bring it there. I just feel that Joe Anderson Brito's wrestling defense is solid enough to keep him on his feet for most of the match. I feel he can get back up too. The other thing is, I feel that on the feet, Sabatini, if he can't get this down, this fight's going to get stopped probably first or second round because Brito's just going to unload on him. And he has no ability to answer back. He has nothing that's probably going to rock him, hurt him, sit him down. I don't think Burrito's going to be able. I don't think he's going to be able to get Burrito, excuse me, not burrito, Burrito's respect. I'm just hungry. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you
came from
must be
work.
hungry.
Hop right on here. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to do anything to get his respect. So in that regard, I feel like on the ground, if he's able to sweep him, reverse positions, I think Burrito's going to hammer him on the ground. I think on the feet, he's going to abuse him on the feet. And I think that the jiu-jitsu is going to nullify each other. And so I took Joe Anderson Burrito. I'm assuming a finish. That's just me. In rounds 1 and 2, I think he's going to be live for a finish.
I'm also going to second it. I'm going with Brito as well. And I have to admit, when I first saw this fight come out and I had this down, I was like licking my lips. I'm like, I'm going to bet Joe Anderson Brito. I'm really hoping he's a dog, you know, like he's not. He's a slight favorite, like minus 200, minus 250. And I'll be honest with you, I thought he was going to be a much bigger favorite because Pat Sabatini, the narrative around him in MMA is that he's very chinny. You know, he's been dropped in multiple fights, and you know he's been rocked and stopped. When he fought Jamal Emmers, Emmers was able to land a big right hand on him, drop him, and ultimately Sabatini was able to get a leg lock and win that fight because Emmers jumped into his guard. But when he fought Diego Lopez, Lopez was able to get him out there. So the narrative is Sabatini's chinny, he's hittable, and when you're fighting a guy like Brito, Brito's very aggressive on the feet. You know, he is a finisher, you know, whether that's by submission, whether that's by damaging you on the feet with the right hand, with the leg kicks. And ultimately, he's a finisher through and through. And Brito got, you know, absolutely screwed over there in France when he fought against William Gomez in his last fight. He did not win that fight. Brito won that fight. So he should be undefeated in the UFC. And apart from his loss to Bill Algeo. But I got to say, even though I am picking Brito, and I feel like this is a very, very simple pick. I said to Carlos before we got on air, I just have this weird feeling that this is a trap. Like everybody in terms of the betting market is going to be on Brito. It's like a, you know, oh, he should just knock him out. You know, he should be able to walk him down, beat him up on the feet. You know, 1 + 1 = 2. But I have this really weird feeling that it's kind of like we're overlooking Pat Sabatini. And Brito, even though I don't think that he'll mix in the wrestling, I think he knows where his bread is buttered and what Sabatini's good at, and he'll keep it on the feet. I just have a weird feeling with this one, again, that it could be a trap, but I feel really confident in Brito. It's just I can't get out of my head the fact that I thought the odds would be much wider. Maybe the bookmakers feel like Pat Sabatini is you know, coming off of a good performance in his win over, I'm trying to think who it was. Was it Damian Jackson? I just know he submitted a certain individual in his last fight. We took his back. He looked pretty impressive, but and Brito's coming off a loss, so maybe that's why the odds are the way that they are. But I feel good about Brito, but I just can't get out of my head the fact that the odds should be a little bit wider, and they're not really moving that much either. So I do feel like it's a trap. Not necessarily going to bet it high up on my top ticket and my most money, but definitely picking Brito this week. I do feel like he could definitely chin Sabatini on the feet and get it done. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our co-main event. And if you haven't already, like I said earlier, hit that like and subscribe button. And we're going to break down Josh Emmett taking on Lerone Murphy, the Englishman, the 15-0 undefeated fighter, fighting at the Apex this weekend. And I'm going to pass this one to Carlos. Have you got the ageless wonder in Emmett, the 40-year-old, or are you going with Lerone Murphy to stay undefeated and go 16-0, Carlos?
I'm taking the streaking Lerone Murphy. You know what I mean? Technically, he's pretty sharp everywhere, like, you know, on the feet, on the ground. Takedown, sometimes he just lets guys get the takedown. Like, you know, maybe it just looks like that he's letting them get the takedown, but maybe those guys are just good wrestlers. I'm not paying attention to it. And they're able to get the takedowns, but he's able to get back up, and he's able to avoid a lot of submission threats as well. He doesn't put himself in harm's way to get you know, submitted as well. He plays it pretty safe. So I feel like I'm okay with it going to the ground. Emmett doesn't really look for submissions. He's always looking to ground and pound most of the time. Um, the thing is that sometimes on the feet, Lerone Murphy, um, he gets hit, not stung, but he does get hit. Usually he's able to roll with it or slide or slip, so it's not anything that's going to be effective, but it's close enough. And I feel like with somebody like Emmett, you got to have a high guard and you got to be very aware of those hooks coming because he doesn't throw a lot of straight punches. He throws some overhands and some left hooks. Nothing straight. He does throw a jab. You know what I mean? But everything looks like it's wide from Emmett, and most of his attack is wide to the body, to the head. Everything's coming from the outside. So if he keeps a high guard and stays alert, he'll be okay. Um, Emmett, he's not the most technical stand-up fighter, so I feel like Lerone should be able to work his magic right down the middle, to the body, any which way he wants to. But it's the power of Emmett that's got to make you wary. It's what's going to happen if he catches me. Does he hit that hard? Does he put people out, or was Bryce Mitchell just soft? Because he hit Yair Rodriguez and Rodriguez was able to get right back up. So maybe it depends on who he hits. Maybe he's not that big of the big bad puncher as he wants people to believe. But Lerone getting dropped by Ige in his last fight. Yeah, he got dropped by Ige. Ige is a tough guy. Nothing wrong with that. It was a mental lapse for him. Ige didn't throw a straight punch down the middle. Like Lerone Murphy also turned into that punch, by as he was pivoting his body, he allowed that shot to come down the middle. So I just feel like Lerone should win this. What are the odds in this one?
Murphy is not a crazy favorite, but maybe minus 200, minus 300, somewhere around there in that ballpark.
Okay, so that's fine. You know what I mean? Like I felt like it should be closer. The sad part is the only thing that makes this closer for me is even though Lerone's safe, he's got good technique, he seems pretty solid, good movement. It's just how does he react when he gets hit by Emmett? And then when Emmett actually imposes his wrestling on him, how does he deal with that? You know what I mean? Like because Emmett can just put you up against the cage and just keep taking you down and throwing a couple of hooks as you get up, throwing a few knees as you get to your feet, and then take you right back down again. Is Lerone going to be ready for that? I think he's ready. I think he's got what it takes to pull this off. As long as he stays safe, I think he'll get the decision.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Murphy as well. And to be honest with you, they always say, don't they, in MMA and in boxing that, with age, the last thing to go is power. And I do think Emmett does hit pretty hard. I think what he did to Bryce Mitchell does demonstrate his power, especially when he lands clean. But I just want to remind everybody that Murphy did look very impressive in his fight against Edson Barbosa. And Edson Barbosa is one hell of a striker. And he was able to, implement wrestling, implement his striking. And I think Murphy's speed and athleticism and youth in this fight is gonna pay dividends against Emmett. Obviously, in that fight where Emmett fought against Calvin Kattar, Carlos and I both thought, Calvin, even though he didn't necessarily have the best performance, we still both thought that he beat Emmett. And to me, I also look at it like I don't really rate a knockout win over Bryce Mitchell anyway. So arguably, to me, there aren't impressive performances. And like I mentioned earlier, 15-0 Lerone Murphy on the up and up with momentum. I think his athleticism, he can mix in wrestling. He's the taller guy, a little bit of a bigger reach. Everything to me says you pick Murphy here. And don't get me wrong, he didn't necessarily look amazing in his last fight against Dan Ige. But one thing I will say about Dan Ige, is he does hit very hard as well. But Murphy was able to stay in there. He got dropped in that fight. He got clipped. But he hung around. And the thing to me in this fight is Murphy might have to overcome some adversity, but you have to rely on Emmett landing in 3 separate rounds for him to win or to knock him out. Whereas I feel like Murphy is going to bank rounds, kind of like Brandon Moreno did the other day, using his athleticism, mixing in wrestling. And ultimately, I think he's going to either win a very, very, clear, unanimous decision, or Emmett's going to catch him. And I can't pick a guy based on, oh, well, in the whole fight, he's just going to land one punch and knock a guy out. But for the most of the time, he's probably going to be losing the fight. That's pretty much how I see this matchup. Is the only way I see Emmett winning is if he catches him. And you could probably make that argument with every single fight. Well, I think this person's going to win because they just so happened to catch this person. So Murphy needs to be on his P's and Q's. Emmett does have power, but if he can stand on the feet with 5 rounds with Barbosa, then I think that he's going to be able to stand on the feet with Emmett for 5 rounds. So going with my my hometown guy, going with Murphy. And if Murphy is listening, which is probably not, but hopefully one day he is, tell COD I'm playing him one-on-one, then I'm coming for him because those two train at the same gym. So I'm going to beat COD one day one-on-one. I know Carlos is going to be watching and have some money on that game. But before we do break, the breakdown up and we do end here, I just want to say hit that like and subscribe button if you've made it this far. If you do and you are interested in betting, like I mentioned before on the channel, we do a best bets video that I do every single week, going through the best bets that I like for this card. And also, I forgot to mention, too, I did a PFL video. I know a lot of people in the MMA community aren't doing PFL. They're not covering it hardcore, but the Ground and Pound podcast has got you guys covered. So check that video out. I'll leave a link in the description for that video. And check out the Best Bets video that's coming out on Friday. And before I do leave, I'd like to let Carlos say his piece. Do you have anything that you want to say to the people before we wrap up the show?
I got nothing really to say to the people. It's just we've been hearing almost all day today. We're still looking for Jones. We want that fight. We want Aspinall versus Jones. Everybody wants it. John wants it too, and I got no problem with him looking for, getting his scratch for this fight either. But, you got to stop hiding, John. I know you're somewhere in here. You're either here or you're at Aaron because we could hear you. So get on over there, talk to Uncle Dana, get this fight set up.
And that's the bottom line because Carlos said so. And that's us out, people. Like I always say, hit that like and subscribe button. Keep an eye out for those videos coming out. We appreciate all of you guys tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week or on Friday's video. Peace.
Peace.